Welcome back to People Analytics. I'm your host, Lindsay Patton. Today I have with me Lynn Lobe, who is the Director of Human Resources at Vytelle. Welcome, Lynn.
Hi, Lindsay. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so can you tell everyone who you are, what you do, and why you do it?
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. My name is Lynn Lobe, and I'm the Director of Human Resources at Vytelle. And why do I do it? I have an intense passion around helping people.
Yeah.
That's the why. Yeah.
And we're going to dig into that today. I'm very excited. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. I know that your biggest passion is your family. So can you tell me a little bit about that passion?
Yeah, I absolutely. So I have two kiddos, one who's about to be 18 here in a couple weeks. That's kind of wild because I don't know where that 18 years went. And then I have a 13-year-old. These are both boys, and they keep me on my toes and, just incredibly bright minds and feeling good about, future for them. So I also have two dogs, one male, one female. And the little female is about 6 pounds worth of, I don't know. She's kind of feral at times, but she's the right kind of naughty. That's what I say.
It's always the little ones you have to look out for.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
I have a pug beagle mix, and he gets into some trouble.
Yeah. It doesn't always make the best choices, but I love her anyway.
Right. You love them.
That's right.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about when that passion kind of ignited. Did things change for you after having kids in the workplace? Did you kind of notice things that were different before and then after?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I really started my career journey a long time ago. I mean, who doesn't dabble in the whole babysitting thing and, trying to figure out the whole workforce situation. My first actual job was at Dairy Queen, and I feel like I could still, figure out how to do that Dairy Queen curl. And then I went into the military. And so I was in the Army, and that was a big exposure point for me around, human interaction and, how to work together as a team. And, just trying to understand the different personalities of people and how they can truly work together. Right. And, and witnessing and observing how divides can often lead to a path of nowhere. So I really invested a lot. I'm an observer. I'm the weird lady at the airport who's checking everything out. So I just love to observe people. But fast forward then to that, I've always had some level of HR in my career pathway. And I think because it's that people element. But before and after kids, life changes in a wild variety of ways. After having children. And I think for me, it was around, I'm definitely somebody who likes order. I think that comes from, a little bit of my military background. Yeah. How to engage with your children, right? So it's just even more around you've got a room full of toys, and, if somebody who likes order, it's like, how do you let kids be kids and have fun with all those toys everywhere? But then how do you make this so that it's also appealing to want to clean up your toys, right? Yeah. And do it in a way where your kids aren't, fighting the fight, and, everybody's in a little bit of harmony. So, yeah, so I think that's then how fast forward to today, being the director of HR at a global company, being able to, have a connection point with our employees and understanding wants and needs. And, that's one of the greatest things about working in the environment that I am in, is that, it's kind of the world is your oyster approach a little bit. And, I love the development piece, the employment law piece, the immigration piece. There's just so many different pathways, and all put a company on a path for betterment. And what an awesome position to be in.
Yeah, and what an incredible story you have, too. So we recently had a guest who is a champion for veterans in the workplace, and she shared information that is so important for other people leaders to understand is that veterans have a very unique skill set. And it's so when you're thinking about your experience in the military, what kind of unique skill set? You said orders is one. What other things do you bring to the workplace?
Well, this depending, I mean, depending upon who you ask. I mean, I don't, I don't ever look at anything. I feel like I can do anything,
That's
right?
amazing. I love that.
Well, thank you, right? But then my, you know, I've been it's been said that I get overzealous in the things I want to accomplish, right? So it's a blessing and a curse, right? But I think that part that we get to embody, in human resources is that, again, if you make those connection points with a variety of folks or all the folks in an organization, you can draw in the ability to inspire people to want to do the work, right? I mean,
Yeah.
HR is a team sport, uh,
Mm.
and everybody is impacted, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
I
I think
like that.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I know that you just love, all things HR and just helping people in general. So, tell me about what that was like being a helper growing up and then transitioning, from childhood helping to adulthood helping and, finding your place in HR.
Oh gosh, that's
That's a big question.
that's a really big question. I think one of the things in my childhood is that I was, even in my family dynamics, I was a little bit of I wouldn't say a peacekeeper, but I think it was more about like who's on first, right? Like this
Yeah.
person's here and who's got this and what's on this schedule. And then even in from a friend group situation, it was like, if someone was going through something down and out, I was
Mm.
tended to be the person to go through. But I also had a really good hero in my life. That was my father. And so
Oh,
he was a meat cutter and a butcher. And so his clientele loved him not only because he just was very artful in how he, cut the meat, but, he was oftentimes a therapist for people.
oh.
And, I mean, these folks, a lot of folks would come to him and just kind of divulge all of this very confidential information. And he always kept it close to the vest. And, um, sometimes people would say, well, what do you advise on that? And he would where he could, but he'd also reserve that right to be like, I don't know, but maybe you could, go down this avenue to try to find a resource. Right. And I just think that was really empowering in the sense of, empathy. It was an excellent example of empathy for me. Right. And
Yeah.
so not to say that he didn't get angry with people, but he was also very good at, sharing when there were points that feedback was valuable. And so, yeah, kind of going back to that, if I'm in a tough spot or have to make a tough decision. So those are some of the things that ground me. And I look back on that and go, what would my dad do about that?
Yeah, and it's so interesting when you tell that story. I see so many parallels of, HR in the people space that you would have never thought with, a butcher's business. So that's really, really cool to see that and see, you have your father be an example of, who you are now today.
Yeah, it definitely ingrained in me a lot of values first kind of way of living. But people and probably dogs are, where really the passions are, right? I
Yeah.
don't have all the answers, but I definitely, it goes back to when I feel like I can do anything. I mean, it's like what I tell my kids, like there's always a way.
Hmm.
We just have to talk through and walk through and figure out what that is, but there's always a way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that you've always had an HR component to your career. So can you tell me a little bit about that journey starting out, as a young professional and then, making your way into the HR leadership role you are in today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it goes even back to my military days. I was a squad leader quite early in my career. Didn't know what I was doing. Look back on that a lot and go, you did not know what you were doing. Okay. Um, there's always a solution. There's always a way through. But then, I think I really started to uh, refine certain points when I moved on to the University of Minnesota and, again, was in a supervisory and management role there. And again, leaning into, empathy wasn't really the buzzword then, but, there's obvious symptoms and signs of when people show up to work and, how they are normally versus, maybe when something is going on in their lives. And so, just have always had some level of management in my background. And so always tried to have some type of close relationship with HR so I could get an understanding of not only how I could be a team player with HR, but, what are some resources available, which are always changing in the world for that point in time. But when I started at Vytelle, that was back in 2020. So, we had COVID that was happening, and, it was an interesting, I have a very interesting career path I've carved out for myself. And so Vytelle was this really awesome way for me to be able to put everything back in sync in my animal science world, and then this corporate pathway I had carved out. And so I met this fantastic individual who is our CEO, and as people would say, I drank Kool-Aid. And I think it was, maybe 8 months after I'd started, we had a talk around, we had the need for, some HR components. And that's where then this whole thing was born. So I've been on a learning journey. I've always been on a learning journey, but this has been 100% focused on HR, and, no day is the same. And I definitely don't know it all, but, you try to surround yourself with people who know more than you do.
Yeah.
And again, there's nothing we can't solve or work through. So.
Yeah. And, something I really love about your journey is the importance of opportunity and giving people opportunity. Because I know that, you were asked to put some foundational bricks into place, and that's a huge opportunity and also can be very overwhelming. So how did you, tackle that?
That is a really good question. It feels a little bit of, we joke here at Vytelle that, we're moving at such a high rate of speed that, being here for 6 months is, the equivalent of like 2 years. Because we're accomplishing a lot. And I like how you framed up that, it's one of the things our CEO speaks to is that, we're all here and we have the ability to put a brick in place with our name on it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, because of my passion for people, I think that's where it, and she saw that in me. And so I think that's where, it was kind of like, okay, every day, what can we make happen? And what could be the goal for the week, and what's the goal for the month and the quarter, and, so on and so forth. And again, I didn't do this alone. I mean, I have had the support of many, and, have had many folks, offer up their feedback and, kind of a sense of direction, or, a guiding light, if you will. And again, it's a team sport, right? So, but, you start with, I think we had to really establish what our HRIS system was. We're international or global. So, we've got a couple different mechanisms for payroll, and then you got to start building out policies, and then you've got to, put some definition around how do people grow in the development, and, what do we do from an immigration perspective? And, every different state has a different law for different things, right? And, how do we stay within the framework of that, and then also then go beyond the borders? And yeah, I mean, no day is the same. And, for me, I love a pattern, but I love to, go beyond those boundaries.
Yeah, definitely. So my next question is, comparing, what's it like with an HR program that already exists that needs to be overhauled versus starting fresh? So do you think one is harder than the other, or do they have their own unique challenges?
Yeah, I think there's complexities on both sides, right? I mean, one of the things when you're starting out fresh is, you want to tackle everything at once, which is impossible. Yeah. So you got to really prioritize, and you also have to be okay with, okay, now this priority has come into play, what needs to take a back seat. And that's pretty eye-opening, right? And then, I think on the flip side, if you're a 10-year established company, I think, there are a lot of pieces that, could require change, and change management is its own beast. Yeah. And if not done well, it's thrown companies for a loop, right? Yeah. So delicacies on both pieces, I think.
Exactly. So I know that, you had a lot of work ahead of you when you started, putting the pieces of the HR department into place. So I know that, when you have processes, you can focus on other things and kind of help prevent fires. So what has helped you in your processes to help prevent those fires?
Yes. So, well, that's a great question. I don't know that we've landed the plane on preventing fires, but
Do
does
we ever?
yeah, does any company, right? Exactly. I mean, I think you got to sit down and really listen to people, and I think that's where curiosity and the will to understand other people's my perspective on what could be a fire could be really different, from what our VP of product development might be,
Yeah.
right? And so establishing a baseline around, who's in need of what and what's realistic, right? It can all get done, but what can you map out? What can be scoped? And I think cost is a piece around it too. But when you're looking at processes overall, I mean, you want to be able to scale as a company. And I think a lot of times where very very rigid structures get into a little bit of trouble is that you have to sit there and say to yourself, this is a living, breathing document,
Yeah.
or this living, breathing system, and no one's telling you you can't change it.
Yeah.
I mean, so you can actually live in it in a little bit. I mean, map out all the things that make the most logical sense, and then you put things into real life play. And if something's not working, it's okay to say this isn't working.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know with those fires, you have a very healthy relationship with them and you view them as learning stepstones. So, can you talk about the value of that?
Oh my gosh, yes, yes. My younger self would get probably frustrated. I know I did get frustrated because I was always trying to control everything. And that was one of the things when I was on my leadership journey, getting my executive MBA at Rockhurst University, was I was very intentional. I said that to my coaches, like, I don't want to control everything. How do I stop trying to control everything? Right. And, it's laughable because I never had control like I thought I did. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think once you start to get really comfortable with knowing that and coming to that reality, you start to see things in a much different way. And then you do start to relax into this is an opportunity, right?
Hmm.
And, there's just such excitement around that because it really does change everything, how you look at everything, a variety of ways. I mean, there's still fires. You can still categorize them as fires, right? But again, when you combine, we're going to figure it out, and you combine that with there's nothing we can't do,
Yeah.
it's going to get done. And leading with that is a little bit simpler, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you touched a little bit on immigration earlier, but I'd like to dive into that topic because I know that it is a passion point of yours and something that, as an international organization, you deal with a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely an opportunity that has been afforded to me, by Vytelle. I have a lot of, colleagues who do work globally and, been fortunate enough to have met them throughout my career. And I'm definitely somebody who doesn't see that talent just doesn't have borders to me,
Yeah.
right? And I think now more than ever, it's not just how it impacts Vytelle, it's how it impacts companies all over the globe. It's not US specific, it's not UK specific. I mean, there's talent everywhere. And when we isolate ourselves into one geographical space, that's a challenge. And
Mm,
why,
yeah.
right? Why? I mean, if we learned anything from COVID, it's like, isn't that one of those things?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. So when you started getting involved in immigration and learning about immigration law, what was something that surprised you that you think that not many people know?
that's a really good question. And I walked in with my rosy colored glasses on and my we can get anything done mentality. And I think I opened the box and I was like, oh, I don't know anything. Just put the cover back on. But there's there again, that sincere will to go, okay, we've got this talent that we know exists beyond our borders. How do we get it, so that it's applicable to what we're doing throughout the globe? And, how does that help us? And so, but I'm not trying to go around your question there, but it really was just like this whole eye-opening event
Yeah.
of, and I think the other piece here too is that there's very different approaches in the US to, how it's done in other countries.
Hmm.
There's parallels, but there's just variations that, and I think, sometimes the laws change and you might not be aware. Um,
Hmm.
Sometimes your trusted legal counsel isn't even aware. And it's just like, now you've got to kind of, pivot around that.
Wow, that is chaotic. So, as someone who enjoys order, how do you tackle that kind of chaos?
I think it's just also having the exposure to some really good project managers.
Mm,
I'm not a project manager expert. I've been able and fortunate enough to work alongside some, and I think that's where that sense of order comes into play. It's like, okay, how can you strategically map this out so that this entropy that you've got going on can now be put into a scope that has a workflow to it. And so I think without that, I'd be back into my old ways of, trying to control the whole mechanism when in reality, if you've got it mapped out, it becomes a plug and play.
yeah. So, you talked a little bit about global mobility. What are some challenges that you think need to change in order to have increased global mobility in the workplace?
Oh, good question. I think, and this is, of course, easier said than done, but, I think there's a ton of bureaucracy around this
Yeah.
whole approach. Automate where you can, right? So I think we can, do a little bit better there. I mean, that could be a loaded question around, some politics, so I'll stay away from that.
Fair.
But, I think it's a matter of, there is a need. I think there's, I think this ties back to a whole ton of other things that, we see for our future, right? I mean, globalization is here.
Hmm.
And so some of the antiquated approaches, I mean, a lot of people that work in immigration would tell you it's not working,
Yeah.
right? So how do the voices collectively come together in a way that then, you've got a platform to say this isn't working, so what can we fix? And then now it goes into there's going to be entropy. How do we project manage this?
Yeah.
And it doesn't, and that's the kind of the issue, right? I mean, there can be a lot of cooks in this kitchen and in this endeavor, and it's yeah. How do you do it so it's fair and equitable and doable?
Yeah, I mean, it's you bring up such a good point because I have to be honest, I do not know where you're calling in from.
Oh, I'm here.
Right, like, it's so odd. Like we've gotten to this point where it's like, oh, we can connect with whoever, wherever. That halfway through this recording, I was like, I don't even know where Lynn is sitting in the world right now.
I'm actually in Lenexa, Kansas. It's a beautiful sunny day, which is about 20 minutes from downtown Kansas City. Yeah, yeah, that's where our Vytelle headquarters is located. But you're right. I mean, a lot, and this isn't a plug for Vytelle, but it is. But is that we have a lot of remote roles, and I too work from home occasionally. And then we have a lot of specialized talent who work in our laboratories. Who are we also have folks who are working hard out in the field. That would be our veterinarians and our field embryologists, and they're highly engaged with our commercial team and our customers, right? And so this is an effort. It is a global effort, and so yeah.
Yeah, it's global. As you said, globalization is here.
It's here. Yeah, can't refute it.
Well, Lynn, this has been a great conversation. I really enjoy your views on HR, your passion about HR, your passion for people. I feel like we covered a lot, but is there something that you would like to add or think that I missed during the conversation?
Oh goodness. I mean, I could go on with this conversation for hours and hours and hours. I think the last piece I would add in is that I've met some interesting folks, students who are trying to figure out their pathway right now, and
Mm.
they're like, "How do I? I'd like to go into HR, but I really want to stay in animal science." And I think people really, take time, spend time in that. There's an opportunity there, right? So, I mean, we've got animal science that's not just on the ground working with animals. We need people in finance. We need people in HR. There's so much that can be done with this, and so I think, if you're entertaining any kind of animal science program and you're kind of looking outside around what would be the non-conventional animal science route, look into those things and speak with your advisors and have those conversations.
Yeah, and I do have one more question that popped into my head. How does it feel to combine your passions with HR and animals, specifically dogs?
Oh gosh. Yeah, that is a really good question. I don't know. I get really excited.
Oh, I love that you get excited.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't know me, you could probably be like, gosh, she needs to, I think the folks that I'm, blessed to work with, they know me pretty well to know by now that this is pretty authentic. But the relationships that you have in your life are critical, right? And I think that, the universe puts people in our pathway for a reason. And sometimes we see those and there's clarity around that and sometimes not. But ultimately you get somebody in my role, you get the ability to touch somebody and impact for the positive in every situation that you can work in. And so, tying that back to dogs, honestly, at one stage of my life, I actually started a dog rescue in Florida and loved that a ton. And so worked with a lot of folks. The model was actually helping dogs in the Humane Society that were kind of on death's door, if you will. They were slaughtered for euthanasia. So we would pull those guys. And then the folks who are volunteers were in recovery from drug and alcohol abuse. So it was really this people helping animals, helping people approach. And it was, right. And it was
incredible.
That, it was just like, let's put this into motion. So there's a ton of benefits. So I have a lot of takeaways in life that I try to put into action from this HR.
And I can see where each, phase of your career, whether it's the military or the dog rescue or HR, there's some element of people and helping, whether it is people or animals. And that's really cool to see.
Yes. Relationships are everything, right? So, we're here for a little while on this planet. Let's do what we can.
I think that's a beautiful statement to end on. Well, if you are, or someone is like Lynn who loves helping, email me, lindsay@staffgeek.com. Thank you for listening to Staff Geek's People Analytics Podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Patton, and I'm always looking to interview leaders who put people first. If you or someone you know lead with a people-first mindset, please email me at lindsay@staffgeek.com. That's LINDSAY@staffgeek.com. If you want to take things a step deeper and understand your organization's true culture DNA, I encourage you to take Staff Geek's free culture assessment. Just head to staffgeek.com and click the button that says Free Culture Assessment. Thanks again for listening.